You know, you sent over this fascinating research review on adolescent bullying, and it really made me reconsider some things.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, we tend to see bullying as just this purely negative thing, right? A real problem, no redeeming features. But this review suggests maybe we need to look at it through a completely different lens.
An evolutionary one.
Exactly.
Precisely. We're going to delve into this idea, this possibility that bullying might actually have roots way back in our evolutionary past. The piece you mentioned, it's a review looking back over 10 years of research,
Right.
examining a hypothesis that, well, when it first came out around 2012, it was definitely seen as pretty controversial.
I bet. The initial thought was sort of, why is bullying so persistent?
Uh-huh.
Why do our usual ways of dealing with it sometimes just fall short? Could it be that this behavior actually served some purpose way back when? A purpose that might, I don't know, still be echoing in how teens interact today?
And that's the core question the researchers are exploring. Could bullying, in certain specific situations, have actually given some kind of advantage to the individuals doing it?
And maybe still does.
And perhaps still does. Now, it's really, really important to underline this, and the review does too. This isn't about excusing bullying
No, absolutely not.
or condoning it in any way. We are not saying it's okay.
Yeah, not at all. What we're trying to get at are those potential, maybe aha moments, those deeper understandings that might come from looking at where this behavior could have originated.
Yeah.
The review you flagged really dives into the evidence, right, from the last decade, seeing if it supports or refutes that initial evolutionary idea.
And the review's conclusion is, well, quite strong, actually. They state that the research since 2012 offers very consistent and strong support for the idea that adolescent bullying is, at least partly, an evolutionary adaptation.
Wow, that's a pretty big statement.
It is a significant one.
Okay, so let's unpack that. What does it actually mean for a behavior like bullying to be called an evolutionary adaptation?
So, in evolutionary terms, right, an adaptation is basically a trait, or a behavior in this case, that evolved over generations because it helped individuals survive and reproduce more effectively.
Okay.
The original idea back in 2012 was maybe bullying played some kind of adaptive role within those adolescent peer groups,
Yeah.
the social dynamics.
Right.
And this review then looks at 10 years of research since then to see, does that idea hold water?
And according to the authors, it seems like it does. They even talk about something called facultative adaptation. What's that mean when we're talking about bullying?
Ah, right. Facultative adaptation. It basically means it's an adaptation that isn't rigidly fixed. It's not like everyone does it all the time.
Okay.
Instead, it's expressed conditionally. It depends on the environment, the individual situation.
So the idea isn't that every teenager is just like programmed to bully.
Exactly not. It's more like bullying might be a strategy that gets used based on a kind of cost-benefit analysis, maybe happening subconsciously, but weighing potential rewards against potential risks in that specific situation.
Can you give an example of that kind of adaptation?
Sure, think about tanning. Our bodies can produce more melanin, that's the adaptation, but it only really kicks in, it's only expressed when we're exposed to sunlight, the environmental trigger.
Got it.
So similarly, the capacity or potential for bullying might be there, but whether it actually shows up depends on the specific social climate.
That makes sense. It's not saying everyone is a bully, but the potential might be there, and certain conditions could trigger it.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the review gets into the 5 R's of adaptive bullying. This sounds like the real core of their argument.
Absolutely. This is where they break down the potential functions. The 5 R's are reputation, resources, deterrence, recreation, and reproduction.
Okay, let's take them one by one. Reputation first.
Right, reputation. The idea here is that maybe engaging in bullying could elevate someone's social standing, their dominance within the peer group.
So it's about climbing the social ladder, essentially, establishing a hierarchy.
Precisely.
Hmm.
And the review points to research supporting this. They mention studies looking at social networks in schools
Huh?
and finding connections between who bullies target and how the bully's own prestige changes within the group. It suggests it's not always random.
Interesting. So picking on someone seen as maybe lower status could actually boost the bully's own standing.
That's the implication, yeah.
Hmm.
And other research looked at how the sort of prestige norms within a group, what gets valued, can actually fuel the motivation to bully, especially in early adolescence.
The desire for recognition, for status, driving the behavior. Okay, reputation makes a kind of unpleasant sense. What's the next R?
Next up is resources. This one is maybe a bit more straightforward to grasp.
Okay.
From an evolutionary angle, bullying could have been a way to get access to or control over valuable resources.
And not just like lunch money.
No, not just tangible things like possessions, although that could
Hmm.
be part of it. It also includes things like social opportunities, maybe access to desirable cliques or, social information.
So bullying could be a way to be a gatekeeper or to hoard things that are seen as valuable in that teen social world.
Exactly. Think about it. If you can successfully intimidate others, you might be more likely to get what you want. A spot on the team, attention from certain people, access to limited social things.
Right, okay. That leads into the third R then, which is deterrence. How does that work?
Deterrence is about discouraging others from challenging you. So by showing aggression, showing you're willing to use force, you can make others think twice about challenging your status or your access to those resources we just talked about.
It's like signaling, don't mess with me.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Don't even think about crossing me or there will be consequences.
Yeah.
It's a way to prevent challenges before they even happen.
So it's almost like a preemptive display of power, establishing dominance by making the threat of aggression seem credible.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yes. Maintaining dominance through that threat.
Okay, the fourth R is where I think you said things might get a little surprising. Recreation.
Yeah, this one can feel counterintuitive. Bullying as recreation or entertainment.
How does that work? That sounds quite disturbing.
It does initially, but the evolutionary perspective suggests that, for some individuals, the act of bullying itself might serve a recreational function. Think about the social dynamics, the feeling of power, the control, the reactions they get from the target, maybe from bystanders too.
You mean the act itself is rewarding?
Some researchers propose that these elements could be intrinsically rewarding for certain people,
Yeah.
maybe linked to, neurochemicals associated with power or dominance.
Wow. I mean, the idea of getting enjoyment from causing distress,
Wow.
that's difficult to wrap your head around. Does the review grapple with that?
It is a difficult aspect, absolutely. And the review acknowledges the ethical issues. The argument isn't that all bullying is fun for everyone, but that for a subset, the act itself, the social dynamics, might provide some form of maybe satisfaction or even distraction.
Okay. That's a challenging idea. Let's move to the final R then, reproduction. This feels like it could be the most sensitive one.
It certainly is, and potentially the most controversial part of the hypothesis. The evolutionary view suggests a possible link between bullying behaviors and increased mating opportunities or success, especially during adolescence.
Okay.
The review points to several studies that have explored connections between aggression and dating status in teens.
So the idea is that being seen as dominant, maybe powerful through bullying, might actually make someone more attractive to potential partners. Is that it?
Some research, yes, has indicated correlations between aggressive behavior and self-reported dating success in adolescents.
Correlation, though, right? Not necessarily cause and effect.
Absolutely. Critical point. Correlation doesn't equal causation. And the other research has looked at links between dominance behaviors and levels of sexual activity. The argument isn't straightforward, but it suggests that in certain social contexts, displays of dominance, even through bullying, might signal traits that are maybe subconsciously seen as desirable from a reproductive fitness standpoint.
It's really important, like you said, to be careful here. This is complex, sensitive stuff.
Hugely complex. And again, this isn't suggesting bullying is a healthy or acceptable way to form relationships. Not at all.
Right.
But purely from an evolutionary perspective. If certain behaviors, even ones we see as negative now, historically led to greater reproductive success, then the tendencies towards those behaviors might have been more likely to stick around over time.
Okay. So, reputation, resources, deterrence, recreation, and reproduction. The 5 Rs. It's quite a framework, even if parts of it are unsettling. How does this evolutionary idea fit with other ways we explain bullying? Like, the review mentions ecological theories, social learning.
That's a really crucial point for getting the full picture. The review makes it clear that this evolutionary perspective doesn't necessarily clash with those other theories.
Okay.
In fact, you can often add a deeper layer, maybe even complement them. Take ecological theory that looks at how the environment shapes behavior.
Right.
Well, evolutionary pressures could actually shape the kinds of environments where bullying is more likely to be, an adaptive strategy.
So, like, in a really competitive environment with scarce resources, maybe bullying becomes a more common or effective strategy for getting ahead.
Exactly. Or think about social learning theory, how we learn by watching others and seeing what gets reinforced.
Mm-hmm.
Evolutionary drives might influence what behaviors kids pay more attention to, or are more likely to imitate. If they see high-status peers bullying and seemingly benefiting getting that reputation boost we talked about, does that evolutionary drive for status make them more likely to copy that behavior?
Ah, so the evolutionary part could explain why certain learned behaviors become more prominent. It's not an either.
Precisely. It's not either. The evolutionary theory can provide a more fundamental why behind some of the hows explained by social learning or ecological factors.
And the review suggests that bringing these perspectives together, including the evolutionary one, could actually make research and prevention efforts stronger. How would that work?
Well, if we have a better handle on the potential underlying drives, even if they're rooted way back in our evolutionary past, we might develop more targeted interventions.
How so?
For instance, if we recognize that for some kids, bullying might be tied to this fundamental drive for status or resources, maybe our interventions could focus more on providing alternative, positive, pro-social ways for them to achieve those same goals.
That makes a lot of sense. Instead of just trying to stop the bullying behavior, address the underlying motivation that might be fueling it by offering different paths to, say, social status or getting needs met.
Exactly. Give them other ways to scratch that same itch, so to speak.
Now, you mentioned earlier that this is all conditionally adaptive and involves cost-benefit analyses. Can we circle back to that? Because that sounds really important.
Absolutely crucial qualification. Just because a behavior might have evolutionary roots doesn't mean it's always adaptive, especially not today. There are costs.
Like what?
Big costs. Social rejection by most peers, getting in trouble with teachers or parents, maybe internal costs like guilt or shame. These can definitely outweigh any perceived benefits.
So the adaptiveness depends heavily on the context.
Hugely. On the specific social context, the individual's personality, their social skills, the norms within their specific school or group.
So in a school where bullying is really strongly condemned and there are good systems to deal with it, the costs for the bully might shoot way up.
Exactly. Making it a much less adaptive, much riskier strategy in that particular setting.
Which really highlights how important shaping those school climates and social environments is.
Absolutely. The evolutionary perspective helps us understand the potential pull towards bullying in some situations, but it also reinforces just how much influence the current social and environmental factors have on whether that potential turns into actual behavior.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. The main takeaway from this deep dive looking at this 10-year review is that there's, well, quite a bit of research now supporting the idea that adolescent bullying might have these evolutionary roots, suggesting that in certain contexts, maybe way back, maybe even now sometimes, it could be adaptive for achieving goals around things like reputation, resources, deterring rivals, even reproduction.
That sums it up well, and it bears repeating one more time. Understanding these potential evolutionary reasons does not excuse the behavior.
Right, vital point.
It doesn't lessen the harm it causes at all. But this perspective might give us a deeper, maybe more nuanced understanding of why bullying is so persistent, why it's been so hard to stamp out completely.
And that leads us to a really interesting question for our listeners to chew on. Thinking about these potential evolutionary functions, this drive for status, resources, maybe even reproductive success, how could our current ways of trying to stop bullying be, I don't know, reevaluated or enhanced?
Yeah.
Are we maybe missing something by only focusing on the negative outcomes without fully getting the potential motivations behind it seen through this evolutionary lens?
That's exactly the kind of thinking this perspective prompts. It suggests that maybe if we move beyond just labeling bullying as bad or maladaptive and try to understand its potential functions in specific situations, we might find new ways forward.
New avenues for research, better interventions maybe.
New avenues for research, hopefully leading to more sophisticated and ideally more effective ways to prevent it and intervene when it happens.
It certainly gives us a lot to think about. Thanks so much for digging into this with me today.
My pleasure. It's definitely a challenging topic.
But getting these different perspectives, even the uncomfortable ones, feels really valuable for understanding something as complex as human behavior.